Welcome to Real World Peaceful Parenting, a podcast for parents that are tired of yelling, threatening, and punishing their kids. Join mom and master certified parent coach Lisa Smith as she gives you actionable, step-by-step strategies that'll help you transform your household from chaos to cooperation. Let's dive in.
Welcome to today's episode. Today, I know I say this every week, how excited I am to be with you all, but let me tell you all something. Today is a triple special day. Today, I'm joined by a very important person in my life, Corinne Crabtree. Corinne is a fellow coach, a colleague, a mentor, a sister, and a very important person to me. She is someone that helped me love my body. And I asked her to join me today. First of all, let me say welcome, Corinne.
Well, thank you. And I want to say you're special to me too. We have known each other for a long time now. I highly regard you. Like, I talk about you a lot. Whenever somebody asks me about parenting stuff, I'm like, you should listen to my friend Lisa's podcast.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Yes. I feel like Corinne is someone who has helped millions of women around the world love their bodies and lose weight in a way that feels delicious and incredible. Corinne has a few businesses, but really today we're going to talk about weight and loving your body. And this comes up a lot with my clients, Corinne, where we talk about body image. Parents will be worried about their kids' bodies or what their kids are eating, either because they perceive their child's body as too thin or too big. And, one of the things that I know in the world is that kids don't do what we say, they do what we do, right?
For sure.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on today is because I wanted to have a juicy, robust conversation and beg parents to consider neutralizing all conversation about the body, the parent's body, the kid's body, other people's bodies. And as I was preparing for today's podcast, I had this epiphany this weekend. I realized that the real problem around the body when we're parenting children or influencing them as coaches and mentors is if we have judgment about the physicality, and I want to get your take on this, about the physicality of someone's body, if we're judging it because it's too big or it's not little enough or it's not right or it's out of proportion, we train our children to think about bodies that way.
Yeah, no, for real. And it's not even so much like them thinking about, like, if we kind of pass on this idea that there are bad bodies or bodies that, don't work right or whatever, then kids are going to internalize that as like, ooh, that's dangerous. So now I need to make sure that never happens to me. And when kids, especially when they're little and they're not able to really rationalize and think through things, they get very easily misconceived ways of like controlling that. Like I coach a lot of women that their eating disorders, their weight issues, all the things that they experience and suffer with in their 50s and 60s, we go back and we kind of look at like, where did all this begin? And they will almost always have a memory of their mother saying something about her own body, a father commenting about what a girl should look like, this body's more attractive than this body. Like they almost always will have these memories, these inflection points where they took something in, and from that moment on, it like left a wound in them that they're desperately trying to either heal, avoid, or, do lots of antics as in their older life to overcome and to stay away from.
It's so incredibly dangerous. And it makes me so passionate to talk about this because that was my story. I was born into a large body and I grew up a large kid and grew up in a household where I got the message, whether it was intentional or unintentional. Pretty sure it was intentional, but I'll give the people the benefit of the doubt.
Give them some grace.
There we go. Yes. But I grew up believing that I would be loved more if my body were smaller.
Oh, yeah. And I think that like my mother, she had weight issues too. I had weight issues from the age of 9. When I was preparing for this podcast, I was thinking about like one of my own experience. One of my biggest memories that I have is I was probably around 10 years old, just thinking about which house I lived in and, all kinds of things. And my grandmother at the time, my mom was really poor and she was a single mother. She was very young too. She had me at 17. So she was probably, a whopping maturity of 27 at this point. And I'm eating dinner. We lived with my grandparents because we couldn't afford our own apartment. And I wanted a second helping of mashed potatoes. And my mother had just woke up. It was 7:00 at night and she worked graveyard. So she's moody and ill and 27 and she's already struggling with her weight and, couldn't find a man basically. And so like all of this is probably going on in her head. And I remember her looking at me and getting so angry and screaming at my grandmother, if you don't quit feeding her, she will never find a man. And I as a child, I hear that and I'm like, oh my God. And then I feel so much shame for wanting to eat mashed potatoes, a second serving. I'm like suddenly super aware of my body. Now I had already been aware of my body before that, but as an adult, I'm 49 years old. And that, I can see that moment clearly. Now, as an adult, what I've done is I've gone back and I really have looked through the lens of that story. Mm-hmm. There's no way my mother was sitting there, rubbing her hands together, trying to figure out a way to work me for the rest of my life. She was just terrified that I would probably end up just like her. Yeah. And she was blaming a lot of it on her body and her weight because my daddy, who she married, made fun of people who were overweight. Women, especially, it is just in the water we swim around in. It is in the air that we breathe, that our body has to look a certain way in order to be loved, in order to be safe, in order to make enough money to support your family, to be worthy enough to go places and
to
wear
have
certain
friends,
clothes.
to be invited to birthday parties, to be included in the in crowd. I agree with you. I think parents really are trying to protect their children and they mean well. The problem is that it's rooted in diet culture, internal bias, fat phobia, projection, and listen to this, the pursuit of thin privilege.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, and it's what I've come to realize, much like you. I mean, I understand these people that raised me loved me and they really thought they were helping me. The problem is, and I want every parent to hear this, hating the way you look is a learned behavior.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's learned. And again, kids don't do what we say. So if you're a parent right now and you're listening to this and you hate your body and you say, well, I hate my body, but I'm going to teach my daughter to learn love her body. I got bad news for you. It does not work like that. Right, Corinne?
It doesn't work that way because if you this is what I try to tell my clients all the time. And I know you teach this, but kids don't really listen to what they hear. They do listen to some extent, but the majority of them, children, they're observational. They're watching the world and they're picking up cues on, it's almost like we're hypersensitive as children to body cues, to facial expressions and stuff. Because if you think about even as a baby, babies don't know how to communicate other than crying. So they rely on watching what's going on all the time to figure out what my next best steps are. If I'm going to walk, well, I'm going to watch these humans. Well, they all seem to be on two legs. Maybe I should be doing that, So it's not far-fetched to think that your 10-year-old and your 15-year-old is watching you squirm around uncomfortably in your clothes or sighing when you look in the mirror or avoiding mirrors. They know when it's well, mama seems to be in such a good mood at home, but the second we go out in public, she's moody, she's quiet, she's withdrawn. She's kids know that you never want to be in pictures. We have to think about these things. So it's one thing to tell your daughter, you're beautiful and you're all these things. But if you're sitting around and you are not expressing that your body is at least okay, they pick up on it.
Totally.
And you're leaving it up to their mind to create the story around why you're so upset. And so often, it's even if they're not picking up on some cue that it must be that mama's body is not okay, when you're in your head about your body, they may be picking up some cue that maybe I'm not okay. Maybe
Totally.
I'm doing something.
And you know what else?
It's our
Corinne?
head drama.
Yes. Let's take that a step further. Let's say that a girl figures out that her mother doesn't like her body. And people say to the young girl, oh, you look just like your mama. The young girl then, studies show this, she projects then, well, if my mother doesn't like her body, one day my body's going to look like that. I'm doomed. I have 50% of her genetics. I'm doomed to look like that. So they either start sabotaging, this is the message that I'm desperate for every parent to hear. Children not liking their bodies, whether their bodies are big or little, is not innate. It's not inherited. It is a learned behavior.
It really is. I mean, if the best way to know it is to look at a 2 or 3-year-old, like my niece, she was the chubbiest baby that was ever born. She had dimples where dimples barely
on top of dimples.
Yes, I remember. Oh my God, she was a blowout diaper kid. And my brother saying, just getting it out of the rolls is like an impossible task these days. And she just thought she would wear her princess clothes and she had her princess shoes at the age of 2 and 3. And if it was really if body shame was just something we're born with or whatever, then we would feel it from a young age. We are taught to feel shame about our bodies.
Totally.
And at some point as women, we have to just decide, when is the generational curse is going to end? At which generation do we end it? I tell our clients, and you hear me say this all the time, at some point we have to just take responsibility to change the future generations. We may still have to suffer some and we have to really work hard at it and stuff. But I hope that every time I work on any crappy thought that I have about myself and every little thing that I think about my body or anybody else's body, that the work that I'm doing that's so super uncomfortable, that a generation or two from now, that just won't be a thing. That would be amazing.
Oh, I hope I live to see it.
Me too.
Let's talk about this. Having said everything we've said, I think you'll agree with me. And I really want to get your take on this. If the listener takes nothing away from today's podcast, please take this away. All you have to do to be part of that change that Corinne just beautifully illustrated for us, all you have to do is just stop verbalizing judgment of bodies.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah. For everyone. And I think that in order to stop, I think the first step has to be, you just have to listen to yourself. It is a little painful to start listening to the way that you think about you, the way you think about other bodies, the way that you express things and what you say. But before you change and stop, get a really good grasp of what's going on inside your head and that comes out of your mouth and start listening for it. And then this is the other, I think, key piece, Lisa, is women, when they usually turn the volume up of what they're thinking about their body and stuff, it creates so much shame. It's bad enough that we have terrible thoughts about ourselves. And we may even be saying some stuff, unconsciously and, it feels like without our permission at times. But then we layer a layer of thinking on top of it. It's oh my God, I hear all this. I must be broken. I'm a bad person. Something's wrong with me. And this is what I want to tell every one of your listeners. There's nothing wrong with you. If you look at, just go to Kroger or wherever you what do y'all got? Ralph's out there?
Fries.
Yeah, fries, right. Publix, go. Just surf the magazine aisle for a hot second. And you will see how glamorized weight loss is. And I'm in the weight loss business, but I really want to help women change their relationships with themselves and food in order to be able to have a longer, healthier life. But I want you to just look at it. And then I want you to watch TV. And I want you to just scroll your social. It is everywhere you look. So there is nothing wrong with you because you have all of these thoughts and stuff. what we want to do is not shame ourselves for what we think and believe and not judge ourselves for it. We want to say, like, I am so glad I know this now because I would like to change it for my own sake and for the sake of generations of women and young girls to come.
I think that's fantastic. And I agree with you. This is one of the things I learned from you is step one was to not shame my old way of thinking and to really understand where it came from. I was indoctrinated into this body judgment.
Yes.
And, learning that that's what I was doing, it was hard to admit because I didn't think I was doing it, but I was.
Oh, yeah.
And then I had to let go of the shame. And then I had to really separate worth from presentation, right? Thin people are not worth more. Thinner bodies are not worth more than bigger bodies. And just really sitting down and working through all of this inside one's head so that you can model this for your children can be really one of the greatest gifts you can give them.
For sure. Because so much of like our body is genetic. My doctor, he does such a good job of saying this. I just went and got my physical about a week ago. And he gives me the speech every year because he likes to ask me, like, do you smoke? Do you drink? Like he's like taking the intake and everything. And he says, I'm so proud of you because the hardest part of my job is when somebody walks in and we have a lot of lifestyle things that we have to work on. And he always says, you are doing all the things you need that you are in your control. And he's like, there is a lot of your health. And I believe this is the same about our body. There's a lot of things about our health and our body that we can control. And then there's the genetic side. And he's like, we're not going to hate on the genetic side, but we're going to monitor. And your lifestyle stuff could influence it. But we're also not going to hate on the part that we just can't escape. Mm-hmm. And I think the same thing goes with the body. I remember my mom. I'm really not trying to throw my mother under the bus here.
I know you love your mama.
I adore my mother, like to no end. But like she grew up in the 70s and 80s. And then she's trying to parent a young girl who had weight issues in the 80s, like when that was not a good thing at all. And I remember her one day saying to me, you'll just always have big legs. We all got big legs on both sides of the family. And she talked about my Aunt Becky, and then she talked about her and all these other things. And that stuck with me my entire life. And you know me, the one area that I work on the most when it comes to my body is I'm always super sensitive about my dang legs. And so I've been really working on I just have to give up the dream that my legs will ever look different. I've done everything within my control. I have lost weight. I lotion the toot out of them. I drink all the water.
You tried the fat blaster.
I do everything. I've done everything that's in my control, like my doctor said. And at some point, genetics just play a part. And we're not going to hate on genetics at this point. And I just decided I didn't want to spend the rest of my life. I didn't want, at the end of the day, my tombstone read, she had a great life, but always hated her legs. Yeah. And that was pretty much the story. I just kept writing every day.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, Corinne, because I'm sure when people look at you, you're so beautiful and so well put together. No one's looking at your legs but you. I mean, first of all, I think you have fabulous legs, but, we do tend to focus on one area. I'm that way with my stomach. I love my body. My size is amazing. I've lost weight, but my stomach is not flat. And I feel the same way about my stomach as you feel about your legs. But life's too short to worry about my stomach. I've got so many other great things going on in my life.
Yeah. And that is such a great point that you make, because one of the things that I do try to talk about when it comes to body image is we're not asking women to just love everything about themselves. And for most of us, because of the way society is and stuff, that is such a big ask. And when we make a big ask and we can't get there, we tend to just go back to just self-loathing and it's bad and how we've always thought. And what I've been really trying to tell people is one of the most compassionate things we can do for ourselves is admit there are parts of me I don't like, but they're not the whole story. And what I see most often that happens in body image stuff is the parts of you don't like about your body, whether that just is your weight, whether it's for me, it's loose skin and scars from years of being overweight, whatever that is, it becomes the whole story. It becomes the only part of the story we ever tell. And we never give ourselves this opportunity to see the bigger picture of life. So I always like to tell myself, it is okay if you don't like this, but we're not going to spend our entire life focused on it. It's not going to define the day anymore. It's not going to be the only part of your body image anymore. There are other things. And I train myself. This part is just my legs. I have really gotten to an acceptance point where it's like, these are just my legs. I never sit and think like, they're beautiful when they have got scars ripping up and down them, lumpy parts and all this other stuff. It's still, after years of work, it is a big leap, but it feels so refreshing to be able to say like, you know what, those are my legs. And this is what we're doing today. And like thinking about the totality of my life, the other areas, like I'm blessed with great hair. Like I tell my son all the time, you're so lucky you got your hair from me.
And beautiful eyes and a nice voice and amazing arms. I mean, you're tall, you have nice shoulders there's so many things we could talk about other than your legs. Your legs are just boring, right?
Yes. And that's what we want to do is we kind of just want to make those areas of our body that, like, I just encourage people all the time. Like, if you're so fixated on it, the first step isn't to go straight to love. The first step is to learn how to turn down the amount of thinking you're doing about it. Turn up thinking on other things in your life. And for some women, because I work with people who were like me, who have 100 pounds or more to lose. Like, I work with people of all sizes, but when you have a lot of weight to lose, it's very common to be like, there is not one part of my body I like. Mm. And I work with so many women who will legit tell me, I can't find a part of my body that I like at all. And I'm like, okay, is there a part of you or is there a part of your life that you do like, that you can at least find some like respite, some peace and some comfort in, so that we can start neutralizing, like, this is my body. I've been taught lots of things about it, and it's probably going to take me a while to unlearn it, but I'm working on that part. That in and of itself feels so much better than just like, this is my body that I hate. I'm probably never going to change. This sucks. Wah, wah, wah. It's like looking for cracks that we can put into the story of not liking ourselves. And when we can find a crack, that means a little light can come through, and a little light can feel very cleansing.
Totally. And as you're listening to Corinne talk about this, listen from the lens of, if I have a child, a daughter or a son, a he, she, or they, and they don't like something about their body, please don't say to them, oh, stop it right now. Your eyebrows are fine. Or, don't worry about your legs, or they look fine to me. Let them not like a part of their body. Yeah, I get that, I get you don't like your eyebrows, or I get that you don't like your hair. Maybe someone has super curly hair and they wish they had straight hair. Acknowledge that for them, because listen to me, as a parent, to your child, that feels like connection. Remember, I say every week, connection is when the other person feels, keyword, seen, heard, and valued. So if I say, gosh, Mom, I hate my hair, don't tell me not to hate my hair. Acknowledge it, and then maybe help me find 4 or 5 other parts of my body that I do like.
That is so important, because it's, not just with children, but even with yourself, trying to just slap a happy thought or a good thing on top of something you inherently believe is not good feels so dismissive. And I think that's really important with our children. When I think about my clients, what they almost always tell me about when they were children, where some of the biggest wounds were created, and it wasn't even intentional. I always think like the vast majority of parents are very well intended. They just sound like crap when it's coming out, is they always felt never heard. Like, I would try to tell my mom these things, or I would try to say these things, or, I would express my fears and stuff. And they're just like, oh, it's not a big deal, or, oh no, you're beautiful, or whatever. And like in their head, they're not hearing your words of affirmation. They're hearing, you're not listening. Listening goes a long way for children.
It's
And
the
it
most
really
important
helps.
tool a parent can do, Corinne.
Yes, it helps prevent some of those, those fundamental, just like I would, my mom probably won't listen to this podcast. My mother, she barely listens to my own. So I'll just say it. But like, if I could have wished one thing, like in those moments when I was telling her about how bullied I was and how terrible I felt about my body, like I remember her one time saying, yeah, but one day you'll be beautiful. One day you'll lose the weight. Like I know she meant well, but in the moment I was just like, but that doesn't help me now. And then I was getting like, I think for moms, please, if your daughter is complaining about her weight, do not say, well, one day you'll lose the weight, as if she's got to lose the weight in order to feel valued and worthy, because that's the message that ends up getting sent.
Yes.
I know our moms want to help our children if they, if they legit have weight issues. Like my son is 20 going on 21. And I wouldn't say it's a weight issue, but he's getting a belly. He's not a young, active running around 16-year-old growing anymore. And he's eating like a 16-year-old who's running around and growing. And I've really been trying to personally navigate this because my son's on the spectrum, but he does not have body shame. And the last thing I would ever want to do is introduce that. And so I've just been kind of talking to him about energy levels and like saying like, hey, when you're ordering, why don't you start tracking, like, because he, like for him, being able to work and being able to focus is like a super important thing to him. Mm-hmm. And so I've been trying to figure out a way to like start talking about this in what's, because for me, it's not that he has a belly. To me, it's like when I see it, I'm like, I'm hoping he's not getting too much like sugar and things like that. Because I know him. He loves his cakes and he loves his treats. And he's old enough now. Mama's not going to dictate his eating decisions. Yeah. I don't care if he is on the spectrum. I want him to be choosing. And so I've just kind of been talking to him about, hey, let's monitor your energy levels. Let's see, are you more focused the next day? Like, why don't you, I asked him, I said, what do you think about like just writing down what you eat each day so that you can track how that works for you when you work? And he was just like, that's a good idea. So looking for like ways, like sometimes I think like if a child is carrying extra weight, don't focus on the weight. Really think about the totality of what's going on in their life and find ways that like you may want to influence some eating decisions, not just so they can lose weight, but so that they feel good, that they can be active in sports if they want to play sports or whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, this is funny, Corinne. My son was really a chunky monkey when he was a little boy, junior high. And the other day we were looking back through some pictures and he was like, oh, Mom, did you know I was fat? And, we've really neutralized in our family the word fat. It doesn't have any negative meaning to it. Yeah. And he goes, did you know I was fat? And I said, yeah. And he goes, why didn't you tell me? And I said, oh, honey, there was nothing to tell. You were loved just as you were. And I knew that over time, if I never brought any judgment or value to your body, it would work itself out when you were ready. And that is exactly what happened. And I remember back then having some friends that were like, oh, I don't know about that. Are you on top of that? And I remember just refusing to worry about it, to address, like I did the opposite of what was done to me because I had a similar body to his growing up. And there was so much energy dedicated to the size of my body, which in retrospect was not that big. That's the ironic thing, right? Yeah. There was so much value and energy at family get-togethers and discussion. Now, here was the irony. There was all this energy about my body. I want you to speak to this, Corinne. There was all this energy about the body, but then there was like, well, let's go to McDonald's and get a shake.
Yeah.
Which was also very confusing. Hurry up and get skinny, but here, eat this.
Right. And I think that was kind of how I grew up. Like my mom, was so worried about my weight and rightly so. I was getting bullied every day. I was coming home crying and it seemed to make sense that if I lost weight, they would just like solve all my problems in school. And then she was worried about her weight too. One minute we were dieting our butts off. And then the next minute she'd have a bad day at work and we were ordering pizza and having a free-for-all weekend. Like if we ever wanted to connect, if we ever wanted to celebrate, if we ever wanted to do those things, it was always around food. I think it is important it's just important for parents to be thinking about, like, what are maybe some of the unintended messages I might be sending with food, with the body, with my talking, with my lack of talking, my lack of being in pictures,
my comments about other people walking down the street or stars, whether their body has gotten bigger or littler.
Yes, like just even innocent things like that. And then just listening to our kids and the way that they're talking and stuff. And rather than getting up their butt about it, just ask, why do you think that? Just to figure out where is that coming from and stuff.
Yeah. So I think the homework assignment, I always like to give my listeners a homework assignment. So we'll wrap up on this. The homework assignment today from Corinne is take an inventory.
Yeah.
Take an inventory of your own beliefs about your body. Take an inventory of your beliefs about your kids' bodies. Take an inventory, listen to what you're saying, listen to what's coming out of your mouth about your body, your kids' body, other people's bodies. Take an inventory of the message or the theme you're projecting about food. Do we use food to soothe or celebrate? Take an inventory of, am I listening to my kid when they talk about their body, what they like and don't like? Can I show up, even if it's uncomfortable, and be present with them when they're talking about an uncomfortable topic like, I don't like my body, or I'm being bullied, or I'm worried. Don't just push it away. Oh, don't worry about that. You'll lose it one day, but show up and listen. It's that inventory that really is going to serve the connection between us and our kids and really help them, right?
Yeah. And then just one little add to that is not only don't judge yourself for what you find, but also don't feel like this is an overnight fix. Mm-hmm. It's not an overnight fix. It takes time. I always tell people, it's like, it doesn't matter if it takes a long time. It matters is if you're working on it. And those small impacts will lead to big impacts later in life. So any little changes that you're making, you just never know when you're going to have like a strong, powerful, positive influence in your child's life when they're in their 30s and 40s and 50s and beyond.
Mm-hmm. And it's never too late to model something new, ever.
Never.
Ever. So, Corinne, if someone likes what they're hearing, a woman, because Corinne works with women, if someone's listening, I'm sure there'll be many people listening right now that are like, wow, she speaks truth and I want to know more. Where can they go to learn more about loving their bodies and losing weight in a way that feels delicious? Where do they go to learn more about that?
I would start with taking my free course. I have a free course where I introduce the topics of losing weight, but it's not calorie counting based. It's more about listening to the body, which is, I have found for my clients, is such a good way to model the types of real relationship that we want to have food that can influence our children. It's all about like, I think I've had enough. And, oh, I think I'm hungry. So it's at nobsfreecourse.com. And it's just a 3-part video series, but it will really speak to people who are, especially parents who are a little fearful they're going to pass down their dieting heritage, their like obsession with food and stuff to their kids. I'm very anti all of that. And I just feel like weight loss can be done in a much healthier, smarter, relaxed way than what the diet culture has taught us.
And that is what I've learned from you. I mean, I learned there was no rush. I learned we could do a whole hour on all I've learned. I could come on your podcast and talk about all I learned, but I have learned really patience and understanding and curiosity and just a whole different way to lead my life that just, regardless of what the number on that box that I step on says, I learned mental freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's really what I want for women is, we just have so much. I just feel like sometimes we're carrying around a 40-pound weight behind us all the time about what do we look like? What are we eating? What are we eating next? Should I eat this? Is this good? Is this bad? Is this the wrong thing? Like, it's just time for women we are too freaking powerful, and we're made for so much more than obsessing about what goes in our mouth and what our bodies look like all the time.
It's so true. I've given all that up, and the amount of free time I have is like, oh my goodness. I mean, it's just crazy, the mental load. So if you are ready to get rid of that mental load, I strongly encourage and recommend and endorse, go grab that course. You absolutely will not be sorry. I mean, Corinne and her team, and it is a team. It's an army of amazing women and coaches, and just it's just an incredible group of people that I am privileged to be a part of. So big shout out to all the No BS sisters out there. All right, I'm going to end on this. I love me some Mr. Rogers. Y'all know that. He says, knowing that we can be loved exactly as we are gives us all the best opportunity for growing into the healthiest people. Let me say it one more time, y'all. Knowing that we can be loved exactly as we are right now in this moment gives us all the best opportunity for growing into the healthiest of people.
Thank you for having me.
Corinne, it was a pleasure. All right, everybody, go forth and do your work, do your homework, do your inventory. And until we meet again, I'm wishing you peaceful parenting. Thank you so much for listening today. I want to personally invite you to head over to thepeacefulparent.com/welcome and sign up for my free Peaceful Parenting mini course. You'll find everything you need to get started on the path to peaceful parenting just waiting for you over there at www.thepeacefulparent.com/welcome. Can't wait for you to get started.
Thanks for listening to Real World Peaceful Parenting. If you want more info on how you can transform your parenting, visit thepeacefulparent.com. See you soon.